What's going on, guys? Sales Puppy aquí. Sales Puppy is going to be the community where you can come in and learn sales. And today we're going to get into objections and dealing with time objections. So before we get started, just quickly, why you must learn how to deal with objections. So pretend this is our market. This is our TAM, our total addressable market. This is the market that we're going for. This is what our customers are made up of, 100K. Out of that 100K, 5% are never gonna buy. 90% are on the fence. They may buy, they may not buy. And 5% are completely ready to buy. They jump on the sales call or they buy in the checkout and they buy there and then. But a lot of coaches, a lot of people that I speak to just wanna deal with, and their ability only allows them to sell to this 5%. So that leaves that 90%, that 90K on the table. And your role as sales for your business, whatever you do, if you work for someone else or you work for your own business, your role is to make that 90% maybe make a decision. And obviously we want them to decide yes, ready to buy. But of course we get no's. But what we want to do is force that 90% to make a decision. So that's one of the first things that I want you to get into your head. Our role within sales, within the business, is just to get them to make a decision. Obviously, we want them to decide yes, but we need a decision. So let's look at examples. If we just stick to that 5%, we'll be stuck with 5K out of 100. If we can get our close rate up to 15%, we can close 15% of that 90% who are maybe, plus the 5% ready to buy, 20K. Close rate of 25 and the 5K, 30K. Close rate of 35%, which is not crazy numbers, plus the 5K who are already ready to buy, that's 40K. You see how much more there is available when you learn how to close those maybes into yeses. You must understand as well is when we get hit with objections, just a quick one. When you hear your prospect change objection, like you'll see with what we're going to go through today, that means you're closing correct. That means you're getting closer to the sale. So when they flip objection, just remember, you've taken one off the table, now you've got to deal with the next one. So let's say scenario, happens all the time. You ask for the sale, however you ask for your sale, you're ready to get started. They're going to think about it. And now this is when we get the objection. And remember that objections are smoke screens for uncertainty. They're unsure about you, your business's ability to solve their problems, and also their own ability to make decisions. And that uncertainty comes across through certain things they say. And they go into 3 buckets. That's all you need to remember to get better at closing. They just go into 3 buckets. So they blame circumstances. I haven't got enough time, not enough money. That's number 1. Number 2 is they blame others. I need to speak to my partner. I tried something like this before and it didn't work. Number 3, what if it doesn't work for me? I need to think about it. So just remember, these are the 3 things we must listen to. So when we ask for the sale and we hear the objection, we listen to it, and then we group it into one of these 3 things. And what that will allow you to do is, that will allow you to be calm, relaxed. This is where the real salespeople are born, dealing with objections. If you hear what they say and you just automatically think, I need to turn this around and make the sale, it's too much. You're gonna get stressed and it doesn't work. You need to listen to what they say, understand which bucket they're blaming, and then from your experience and your practice, you deal with that certain bucket. So you listen and group it. For example, today we're going to go over bucket 1, which is circumstances, and specifically we're going to go over haven't got enough time. Haven't got enough time to work with you. Haven't got enough time to do this at the moment. Let's do it next month. Delay, time, and time comes under circumstances. So whenever you ask for the sale and they blame time, remember, they're blaming bucket 1, which is the circumstances. So this is how you deal with the objection. Start the objection handling when you hear that. This is where the money is made, like I just said. You acknowledge, you associate, and you ask. You acknowledge what they're saying. I hear you, John. I understand, John. Totally fair, John. Don't argue, because that puts their guard down once you understand once you say, I hear you, John. You associate. You don't always do this, but you associate, which I'm going to show you what that looks like, and you ask. You rather deal with the objection, loop, ask for the sale again, or you ask a question to get to the bottom of the objection. And do you know why we want to get to the bottom of the objection? Because 9 times out of 10, what they've told you is not what's actually going on. I say this a lot, and it's important to understand with objections. A man has 2 reasons for doing a thing. The first one sounds good, and the second one is the underlying truth. So, let's look at it then. Timing bucket. Prospect. I like it, but the timing feels off. This is here where I'd use a game plan close. And I'm going to put the game plan close in the school community where you can see it written out, and then you can just understand, okay, here I use this. Of course, this is not the best way to deal with. Of course, this is not the best way, but remember, we're learning. It will come natural when it feels natural. But if you're learning how to sell, you're learning how to deal with objections, the best thing to do is just have a bit of a script. So hear this, say that. Hear this, say that. So I like it, but the timing feels off. Here we can use the game plan close. So you acknowledge, this is acknowledge. I hear you, I understand what you're saying. You associate. Honestly, John, some of our best clients had the same concern around timing before getting started, and they actually had fantastic results. There you go. You've associated their problem with someone else who's been in your program and has seen fantastic results. And then you ask, John, do you mind if I ask you a quick yes or no questions? A couple of yes or no questions. This is the game plan close. This is where we're going to ask a couple of yes or no questions to actually see if we can get the objection out of them. They're always going to say, yeah, sure, go ahead. John, do you see value in what we do, yes or no? They're going to say yes. John, honestly now, do you have the funds available to get started? They're going to say yes. John, do you believe we'd get to your goals quicker than you doing it on your own? He's going to say yes. Okay, cool. The reason you asked this question as well around the funds available to get started is because if they say no, I haven't got the funds available, then it's not about timing anymore. It's about money. And then you have to deal with that objection however we deal with the money objection. But the objection has changed. Remember I said earlier, the objection will change, and it's your role to get to the bottom of what is actually going on. So if they say yes to all 3, great. We know that they see the value, they've got the funds, and they know we'd get to their goals quicker working together. So what's going on? Normally, it's because of indecision. They're not making a decision. They know they need to make, or maybe they've been putting it off for a long time. So you say, okay, great. You see the value, you have the funds. Don't say money. Money's a bit of a dirty word. Great. You see the value, you have the funds available, and you believe we'd get you there quicker to your goals. We'd get you quicker to your goals than you doing this on your own. So this sounds like this is more just about deciding. Is that fair to say? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to pinpoint what is actually at play. So it's gone from a time objection. They're going to say, yes, it is. It's just about deciding. Because it doesn't sound logical to them. We've gone from a timing objection, the time's not right, to I'm indecisive. So this is when we're getting the layer deeper. We're getting closer to the sale. So this is where you can go through 2 different paths. You can say, let's say you don't have a guarantee in place. Not having a guarantee in place is difficult. And, I'm not saying you need a guarantee to sell because you don't. But the great salespeople can sell with no guarantee. So if you don't have a guarantee in place, you can say, we know that they're blaming themselves, We know the objection we're dealing with is indecision and fear. So we acknowledge, completely normal to feel like that, John. I hear you, and it's common. We acknowledge what they're saying. We don't argue. John, do you mind if I ask you a bit of a deep question? You need a good rapport to ask this question, but it works. It works really well. John, do you think maybe the reason you're in the position you are today is because you haven't made an investment in yourself, an investment in the business? That question hits deep, and they start to question like, yeah, it probably has. And then we can go with the second objection handling. This is the stack. We can stack the close. We have an internal motto that we say, John, you have to change to change. Otherwise, you'll always get what you've always got. So are you ready to change, and we can get you started? So you've dealt with the objection and you've asked for the sale again, here, this part. So are you ready to change, and we can get you started? I'm going to put this all in the school community, break it down, but these are just, I want you to understand, like, you need, closes are like a web. You need to connect them all together. But it's the highest return on investment activity that you can learn. If you can turn maybes into yeses, there's no better skill you can learn than learning how to deal with objections, especially for a business owner or someone who just wants to learn sales. So, or another option with no guarantee, they say, yes, it's about, sounds like this is more about just deciding, fair to say. They're going to say yes, indecision and fear. We've got another option. We've got a zoom out close. So here we've got a close where we're asking, are you in the position because you haven't made a decision? This is called the zoom out close. I hear you, John. I understand what you're saying. Honestly, some of our best customers have had the same concern about getting started and making a decision. It's completely normal. Bring their guard down. John, sounds like we're in the weeds a bit. Let's zoom out for a second and look at the worst case, best case. Can you tell me what the worst case is first? And you have to listen to stuff in the worst case, such as, what if I spend the money and it doesn't work? Then we've got a money objection. What if I invest with no return? What if I can't do the work? I tried something similar with no results. And you see how the objection's been changed from, I haven't got the time, to what happens if it doesn't work for me? So the objection's changed again, and then you have to deal with that new objection. Guys, this isn't simple. Like, it's not simple stuff. I'm trying to break it down to make it simple, but closing, dealing with objections is hard, and the only way to get better is to practice. So, what you do is, once you've got the hear this type of things, what if I invest with no return? What if I can't do the work? I've tried something similar with no results. This is a really good close. When you've got testimonials, but you've got no guarantee. John, I showed you the results of the other founders. What makes you believe you wouldn't see the same results? Then they're going to say, I've been burned before. Maybe I'm just different. I'm not sure it's going to work. John, when you go back to you've got to change to change. John, we have an internal motto. You have to change to change. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. We've helped hundreds of X to reach their goals. We've been through the best case, worst case, but John, only one decision today guarantees that nothing changes. And what is that? That's deciding not to change. So, John, we work together, we change the variables, we change the outcomes, and we change your future. So, John, are you ready to get started? That, of course, you've got to, now, after you ask that game plan close, and you get to say, so it sounds like this is more just around deciding if this is right for you. Is that fair to say? 9 out of 10 times they're going to say yes. If you have a guarantee, it's so much easier. So we know the bucket is they're blaming themselves. It's gone from time, circumstances, to themselves. Do you remember I told you at the start, there's the 3 buckets people blame. They blame them circumstances, others, or themselves. So we've gone from not enough time to blaming themselves. This is the best close to use. Use the good news, bad news close because you've got a guarantee in place. You say, John, it's completely normal to feel like that. I hear you, it's common, whatever you want to say. So John, I've got good news and bad news. Bad news is you can't really make an informed decision without coming in and seeing it from the inside. The good news is you can actually try it risk-free for 30 days, 15 days, 21 days, 2 months, whatever you've got. And during that time, you'll be able to tell them what they'll be able to see during those days of guarantee. They'll be able to train with you twice a day, twice a week. You'll be able to coach them on their calls, whatever it is. Then that way you can come in and see it from the inside. And if you feel after 21 days it isn't right for you or it just doesn't align with what you need, no worries, I'll give you the money back. No questions asked. Does that sound fair enough? That's a crush close. That will close because they just got a fear of making the wrong decision. If you've got a guarantee in place that helps that decision be made, they crash. And here, if they're still not sure, we can go back to the best case, worst case. And this crushes as well with a guarantee. John, let's zoom out for a second, as it feels like we're in the weeds right now. I like to say that because it takes us back. Let's look at best case, worst case. When you've got a guarantee, I recommend you tell them best case, worst case. Worst case, you come in for 21 days, you still learn a ton, and you can tick this off as an option that you've tried it. There's no loss of financial investment, but you still will get closer to your goals. That's worst case, John. Doesn't sound too bad. John, best case, you come in, you love it, and we finally get you closer to getting that business you've always dreamed of, to getting those dates you've always wanted, to hitting that weight you've always wanted, to going on that dream president trip with your sales company. Both options get you closer to your goals. So with that in place, you feeling ready to get started, John? You can't really argue with that. And that's what we want. We want to basically put the prospect in a position where they can't really argue with what we're saying because we're dealing with everything they're saying. So I'm just going to quickly go through one more. When you hear, I like it, but the timing feels off, I haven't got the time. Remember, we've got 2 options to start with. We've got the game plan close, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then we've got the zoom out close, which is best case, worst case. And I'll tell you why this is good to use. I hear you, John. I understand what you're saying. Honestly, John, some of our best clients had the exact same doubts before getting started. They came in and they had fantastic results. John, do you mind if I ask you a quick question? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Do you see value in what we do? You have to ask that question. You need to get them to say, yes, I see the value. Because if you know they see the value, then you can tick that off as not being a problem. Okay, perfect. I'm happy that you said that. John, let's zoom out for a second and look at worst case, best case. Can you tell me the worst case first? The reason you want them to tell you the worst case first is because this is where you can actually hear what the underlying objection is. What if I spend the money and it doesn't work? What if I invest with no return? What if I can't do the work? I tried something similar with no results. The reason you ask them to tell you here, the best case, worst case, is because you need to understand what the real objection is. When we're all the way down here, we've got a best case, worst case, there's a guarantee in place. You tell them in the respectful way, listen, this is risk-free for us to get started, so let's do it. Here, we're still trying to understand what is the problem at hand. So if you have a guarantee in place, after you've asked them the best case, worst case, guess what you do? You go back to best case, worst case with the guarantee, which is you come in, you try it. If you don't love it, give you your money back. Either way, you get closer to your goals. When you do a best case, worst case with no guarantee, it's a bit harder. When you hear this, haven't got the time to best case, worst case, and you hear, what if I spend the money and it doesn't work? What if I invest with no return? What if I can't do the work? I tried something similar with no results. you see how that objection has changed. It's changed from blaming circumstances to blaming themselves. And that's good because we're getting to the objection, which is at play. So you can use this objection. I showed you other results. You have to change the change. We've already been over it. John, I showed you the results of other founders. What makes you believe you won't see the same results? That is a really killer question. I've been burnt before. Maybe I'm different. John, we have an internal motto. You have to change the change. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, John. John, you talk about your credibility. You talk about how you help them reach their goals. We can change the variables, John. We can change the outcomes, and we can change your future, John. So are you ready to get started? You've got to tell them, when you've got no guarantee in place and they're scared of making a decision, you have to tell them if they keep going the way they're going, nothing will change. So, of course, it's a hectic video. There's a lot to digest in there. But the easiest way to learn objection handling at the start is learn 2 or 3 objection responses for each bucket. Circumstances, time, money, partner, tried something like this before, it didn't work. What if it doesn't work for me? I need to think about it. You just need to learn 2 or 3 closes, 2 or 3 objection handles. And you will be able to deal with any of those. And a lot of them overlap. And we've got to remember that objections are like a spider web. We're going to have to constantly move, dance with the prospect, understand what they're saying, get deeper to the actual problem at hand. But a lot of them overlap. Start in a school community, completely free. If you want to jump on and see how to deal with objections, see all of the objections we've spoken about in this video in a downloadable doc where you can come on and print it out, and next time you hear that objection, you've got a little bit of a script. Remember, scripting is not great to start, but you have to understand first before you can go freestyle. So I hope this was of value. If you want to get more free content, happy to review your sales calls, whatever you need to do, jump onto the school community, Sales Puppy, and let's learn some sales peeps.